Yikes. Not kidding. I just got done recording one video. I was walking downstairs to get my food that I ordered, opened my phone for some reason, opened Google, and the first article I saw was this. So it turns out ex-GM of the Mets, Billy Eppler, who was my GM for 2022, was just suspended through this year's World Series for fabricating injuries in order to open up roster spots in the big leagues. And this is very interesting to me for a lot of reasons. I'm trying to think about how I'm going to approach this. Evidently, according to this article, and I would say allegedly, but I guess it's been proven now. And just for the record, Billy has accepted all repercussions of the investigation. He accepts the results and he takes his punishment without fighting it, which some would say is an admission of guilt. Others would say trying to move on because it doesn't really matter if you lean in or don't. It's going to happen either way. And that's generally what happens in Major League Baseball. So it's really hard to win. Hats off, at least for taking that road and not going nuclear on it, because not everyone would do that. But evidently, there were 7 players that were put on the IL without having an injury that called for being on the IL. And that seems like something egregious, something terrible, something that, wow, I can't believe they're manipulating and getting an advantage that way. But what people don't know is this is something called the Phantom IL. The Phantom IL has existed for a very long time. I actually don't know when it first started, but it was an absolute epidemic in the minor leagues. We would have guys on a team that were just hanging out on the Phantom for like an undetermined amount of time. Sometimes it'd be a guy that isn't a prospect and is more of an organizational filler. Yes, those are terrible ways to think about people, in my opinion, but it is the common vernacular used in the game. I don't know if that's a huge bomb that I just dropped, but it's true. If an organizational filler is coming off a long-term injury, say, a knee surgery, and they're like a catcher that the organization doesn't really see being part of the big league team, but they're good at catching the young prospect pitchers, you get a 30-day window to go on a rehab assignment. So say you have a guy who's been in AAA, he's older, you need a catcher in high A, and this guy's going to be coming off the IL soon, but you can get 30 days in high A as a rehab appearance. Sometimes that person will go join that team. They will start a rehab appearance, and then they will continue it, even past when they're technically probably healthy and they could probably go back to AAA, but there's not a spot. They just keep them in high A and say they were re-aggravated that injury, and they need a little bit more time so that they get that time on that lower roster for longer. That's just an example. They're healthy, but this is a way they can be on this roster. And a lot of times the guys are okay with it because it's a spot. And if there's no spots, that could mean not having a job anymore. So you'll take it. So the incentive is there for both sides. It gives the organization flexibility. It gives the player an opportunity to continue to have a job. In recent years, it seems like it may have been used a little bit more at the big league level because of the changes in how ILs work now. Hello. Have you ever wondered how I stayed awake for all of those 9-inning baseball games throughout my career? Well, I'm about to share the secret. Focus Fuel. Focus Fuel is a caffeinated energy gummy that comes in 3 delicious candy flavors. It's got a bunch of great stuff besides the caffeine that smooths out the energy level and prevents the crash later. If you're one of those people that doesn't like to have a shaker bottle with you all the time, have to have powders and spilling it everywhere, and you can't find the scoop, now you can just have a gummy, 50 milligrams per piece, and control your dose that way. You can take them anywhere that liquids aren't allowed, airplanes, concerts, to keep that energy level going. Use my code, BASEBALL, for 10% off your first order at checkout at focusfuel.com. Now, back to the show. So we now have a position player IL, which is 10 days, and a pitcher IL, which is 15 days. The reason for that is roster manipulation. Pitchers tend to go up and go down and go up and go down more than position players. Pitchers, especially when the rules for extra innings were the old way and games could get to 16, 17, 18 innings, you needed guys, usually that next day. And in order to do that, you had to have flexibility to move somebody out of the roster and put someone new from AAA or below on the roster. That makes a lot of sense. However, now that the times have been changed. There are situations where the guy probably should have been on the IL before, but he was toughing it out. Now they don't need him to tough it out anymore, so he can go on the IL. That stuff happens all the time. That's completely legal. That makes sense. You think about the incentives of the game. Being healthy is how you play. You want to be able to play so you don't lose your job, so you're willing to play through injuries. I've done it. I've talked about this a lot before. So that stuff happened. When both positions were on 10-day ILs, it was easier to use pitching like that. But now that it's 15, you lose that guy for 5 more days. So especially if he's a guy who you want to be part of your core, but you could probably get away with not having for 10 days, 15 days now raises the stakes on that quite a bit. So it seems like it's being used in a different way. Now, 7 guys is crazy. And speaking from experience, I know you're going to be like, well, what about you, man? You had Billy. I would tell you. I really would. Trust me. I don't care as much as I used to. I genuinely do not remember a situation where I could be like, hey, isn't that the Phantom IL? We're not supposed to do that in the big leagues. And before you ask, my stress reaction was real, and I was gone for 3 months. It's hard to fake that. Oh, you weren't thinking about that? My bad. 7 guys had fabricated injuries. I can almost say with complete and utter certainty that fabricated isn't the right word here. Fabricated insinuates that there's nothing going on. No. You don't put someone on the Phantom IL that has no issue to point at. It used to be called turf toe. Anyone who doesn't know what turf toe is, common in football, from basically jamming your foot on AstroTurf. There's like 3 AstroTurf fields. If you saw that, that's probably a Phantom, and it was kind of just widely known. It's not as big of a deal because it's in the minor leagues. But now you have to have a compelling injury to open up a spot. And sometimes guys take that back seat because they're getting paid for that amount of time they're out, and then they're going to get an opportunity to come back. But guys would always rather play than be hurt. That is top to bottom. So fabricating seven players, and it's just now coming out. It sounds very insidious, very like sleazy and slimy. I don't believe that is what's happening. I believe this is an issue that is on a spectrum more than most. Lots of teams do these things when a guy is hurt or has a nagging something where that concept of playing through something is completely and utterly subjective. It matters about the guy. It matters about the way they're put together. Sometimes like a sprain will crush someone much harder than another person with a similar sprain. Who's to say that anybody isn't hurt? So that's what's really interesting to me. And now this article does not mention the exact injuries of the players or whatever that were involved, which I think is the right way to go. But I can honestly say that there might be a situation that was a little bit more outside the box and maybe happened a little too much that drew the attention of somebody. And this was also from a whistleblower. So someone had an issue with it, which is also kind of surprising to me. Just generally don't know why anyone would do that, because it's so, like, anyone who's been behind the scenes knows how the line between business as usual and manipulating rosters is just it's a dance. If you're like, doctors are involved. Doctors ask you questions, and then you tell them what you're feeling. They're not feeling what you're feeling. So you're just having a conversation. If you guys think this is like some crazy lie detector test that you go into a room with a doctor and then they're making sure you're not lying about your injury, no. They just want you to feel as good as you can. And they also would like to be able to clear you. Like, that's the goal. The training staff, same way. They just want you to feel the best you can. So if a player goes, hey man, I'm really hurting. They're not going to be like, no, you're playing. That's not how it works. So what if the player does it? What if the player's lying in order to get some extra service time because they feel like they're going to be set down? That happens. This article doesn't cover any nuance. I liked Billy Eppler a lot as a person. I thought he was a stand-up guy, and he was always very honest with me, and we always had very upfront conversations. And I always thought he had my best interest in mind. I did appreciate that. But here we are. Something's come out about the Phantom IL and fabricated injuries, so it's going to be really interesting to see how these situations are handled in the future and if there's anything else that happens this year, because it's one of those, now a precedent has been set, and when precedents are set, especially when things are kind of been a little bit out of sight, out of mind, an avalanche usually starts. So we'll see what happens. Today's phrase, and it's a phrase, is gluten-free bread is awful. Gluten-free bread is awful. If you agree, say it. If you don't agree, say it, because it is, and you're wrong or you're right. Either one. Not good. Gluten deserves to be in bread for the love of God. That's the video. So I'll see you very soon for some other videos. You guys have a good day, and spring training is just around the corner. Have fun at the Super Bowl, and be safe, and make friends. Bye.